Hi, I'm Laurice Temple. I'm the Chief Rippler at Ripple Effect Institute, and I look forward to you joining Prosper and I over the next 45 minutes or so, talking about all things kindness, gratitude, self-care, how you can put tools into your life that helps create a better world. So I hope you enjoy.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got an extraordinary guest who truly embodies the essence of resilience and positive impact. Now, Laurice, how are you doing today?
I am doing exceptionally well, Prosper. Thank you for having me. And there's a huge jolt of joy today in Melbourne. The sun is out.
Absolutely. You see, the thing about Melbourne weather, Laurice, is I've been here for 10 years and I've learned never to talk about it, because if I look out, it might actually just start looking as if, no, it is okay. The sun is there today. So let's hope it stays that way. You know, the weather always keeps changing and you never know.
Watch this space.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, obviously, Laurice is not the weather girl. She is not just a business consultant as well. She is the chief ripper who's dedicated to creating 1 million positive ripples in the world. With an impressive background in infrastructure project management, Laurice has led mega projects across the globe, from the US to Australia, and she also does a few stops in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Thailand along the way. And obviously, with such a track record, it is, an honor to have her on the show today. But what brings her on the show is she's the founder of Ripple Effect Institute, where she actually helps businesses improve through the lens of well-being, positive psychology, and inclusive culture. And her passion is fostering leadership, psychological safety, and sustainable change. And all of this isn't just a theory. It is actually lived experience from all her endeavors in the world there. So her journey includes triumphing over breast cancer and actually facing life's challenges head on, and always leaning into her values and aspirations. So today we're going to be diving into this incredible story while we're exploring what makes her tick and discovering how she's impacting industries like construction and engineering in ways that truly matter. I think you're in for a compelling conversation today. Now, Laurice, we already have been talking, and I think you have such a remarkable, resume and career background, that actually spans from countries, all the big countries and all these mega projects. Let us know what actually inspired you to transition from project management to now founding the Ripple Effect Institute.
It's such a good place to start, Prosper. I think it comes down to, I love mega projects, and you can well imagine you have so many people out there and so many things happening day in, day out. But I think at some point in time, and I would say it was mid-2000s, I started to wonder about why we weren't showing up as our best. Our productivity hasn't been great. Our productivity hasn't been great since 1992 here in Australia. It's been level or gone backwards in some years. And so I got curious around that. And so that curiosity took me to a number of different places, but particularly well-being and men's health, in particular in construction, because again, there's only about 12% women in the industry, that we have the highest suicide rate of men across any industry, double to any other industry in Australia. So there's a stop and pause moment there for me of going, okay, well, there's something to be said. If we're not attracting people in, it's not necessarily because we don't want people that don't look like us. If we're not showing up as our best selves, we're not going to treat everybody else well. And that's sort of where my mindset got to. It probably took me about till 2012. And so in that, I started looking at neuroscience and biology and positive psychology. And my bookshelf looks similar to yours in the back with all those type of books, and started to get the understanding of how people operate. And so that there starts the journey, I guess, of how can we change the culture of construction, right? That benefits all, and all of us feel better at the end of the day. That's really how this all started. And then I kicked off Ripple Effect Institute about 5 years ago with all that in mind.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. Now, Laurice, I've got two young girls, one of which is 9 and the other one is 5 years old. And every time we're playing around, she wants to be a princess, or the other one wants to be a witch. I mean, obviously, maybe it's because of Halloween is almost coming about this. Was this always a dream for you to work on mega projects in construction and all these things that you ended up doing from a childhood endeavor?
No, and I find that we have pivotal moments in time, right? And my pivotal moment in time was when I went to uni, and I went to uni as interested in maths, and I was a maths major. And about the first semester, I thought all I could see with myself was looking at 4 blank walls and doing analytical math problems. And I thought, kill me now. This is not for me. And so, as you do, I was in the pub one night with an engineer after all of our exams on my pivotal moment. And he said, okay, well, if you don't like the maths in that strict sense, what is it that you do like? So out of that conversation, he'd said, he'd asked me some, it's a value alignment piece, really. And I use this a lot and when I facilitate now as well. Basically, what do I like to do and how do I apply it? And that was, I love to be outside. I love to be with people. I love to draw. I love the math side of things, of it's a problem, it's trying to figure things out. And so he said, well, why don't you go and look at our, we have architecture in our construction management. He goes, architecture sounds like we're like, something you'd like, but we don't have an architecture a degree here. It's within construction management. And the next day I went to the construction management building, which was the most awesome building on all of the university side, right? And I fell in love just with the building, right? And I changed my focus there and then. And funny enough, I was really interested in psychology then as well. But my father said, "Oh, your dead body, will you go do psychology?" But I went with construction management and never looked back from there. It filled the need of who I was as a person and that value alignment piece of just all those things that I'd mentioned. Right? So I had no clue in that moment before sitting on that bar stool chatting with that engineer.
Absolutely. Like any story, it starts off with, yeah, I was having a beer and an epiphany happened, and look at what then happened. Now, Laurice, I have absolutely immense respect for people in the construction sort of industry. All right. So just from my own experience, coming from a third world country where construction is very small, and it's when the big building comes in, it's like a wow. But I've been in the area that I live in for about 10 years, and I've seen it becoming a mini city. Every time I drive into the town center, I'm actually, looking at my GPS now so I can figure out my way back home. And this used to be farmland. Now, what sort of interesting projects have you sort of been working on, as we have alluded, America, Australia, Hong Kong, Thailand, and all the other places that you've worked at? Just a few places that you can just point out.
Yeah. A couple of my favorites, and Long Island Railroad that went, I started there in 1998, and it only finished last year. So talk about a mega project, right? And that's taking the old tunnels that had been abandoned in the 70s, and then we used those. And another one was the Hong Kong airport project. And so, if you've flown into Hong Kong, you know that there's, we can't say the new airport anymore, but it was new there, and it was for the transition of the handover of a country. So there was a bigger piece of work than just building something. You're building for the reputation of a country, as Britain is handing over Hong Kong to China. But the Hong Kong airport project was one of 10 projects on that whole program, right? So $26 billion worth of work. And, it was building new cities, the train, the airport, and basically Lantau Island was, expanded. And as I had highlighted before, the love of people, you had 160 countries, people from 160 different countries coming together and working together. So that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, right, I can look at the Hong Kong airport project and said, we just did it, right? We had people from every different country working there, and how you figure out if English isn't your first language, or if this isn't your cultural norms, or if this isn't the way we build things in our country. To your point, you might not have seen things that we saw, in Hong Kong. Or, one of the first things I saw, that was of interest was the bamboo scaffolding. You would never see that in the US. You would never see that within Australia. But if you didn't use bamboo scaffolding, the Chinese would not get up there, because they knew the strength of the bamboo and they trusted it, right? And so, the culture piece was really, really important, right? And so, there's one thing to put, diversity and inclusion in a policy and a procedure, but when you really understand it and feel it, and how we have got to learn how to work together with all our different life experiences, that is exciting as anything.
Wow.
So there are a couple of really fun projects.
I can only imagine, because that really, really puts you in the forefront of people that are supposed to be talking about this diversity and inclusion. The fact that 160 countries converge to come and make one project, which is also in a whole different country with its own cultural way of doing things, because it's always been done like this around here. So you're not going to come in and change that. That's like literally every time you went to work, that's a cross section of the whole world that you had to say good morning to.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so the things that, we might get upset and say, well, I'm going to take you to court on that one. They're just things that happen, and you have to navigate that and figure out, there'd be things like I would go into a meeting and I would be the only Gweilo. So I'm the only white person. Everybody else is Chinese, mainly from Hong Kong. And they would start talking in Cantonese, and they would talk about the Chinese people. And I'm thinking, I don't quite understand. Are you referring to yourselves? And they go, no, those people on the other side of the border, the Mandarin speaking mainland Chinese, right? And so you think, oh, okay. And they're not speaking English because they don't want to disrespect this conversation, right? They want to make sure they've taken it offline. They're not trying to hide anything from me, knowing I couldn't speak the language. They didn't want to embarrass themselves, right? And so there's just a whole bunch of cultural norms that you get to understand, and don't get upset about it. You learn it, and you go, how is it that we're going to work together and make, build this thing, whatever that is, with all those different life experiences and cultural experiences. And it's just, talk about a growth moment. Yeah. 7 years there was beautiful. Love it. I feel like I say to people, I grew up in Hong Kong.
I can only imagine, because if you have to deal with that and still be able to survive and still have that empathy and be in their space while all of this is happening without them infringing on any of your own person. That's a different level of being, and congratulations for spearheading this. And I feel like this is why you now speak of co-creating solutions with the clients that you work with. And this maybe makes your approach differ from more traditional consulting methods because of this Hong Kong escapade that you would have gone through. I mean, most people are coming from maybe somebody like myself who has maybe a mixed family, and having to navigate the milks in the fridge is like, oh, everybody is being included, but you've had to deal with it in that sort of way. How do you work with your clients co-creating these solutions?
Well, you used a couple of really key words, and empathy is one of them, right? And is that emotional intelligence and helping people understand, we all come into the room with what we know, right? And so this, Adam Grant's, rethinking things and trying to look from somebody else's perspective and do that perspective taking with the client in a safe place is really important. So we don't want to out anybody, make it psychologically safe and say, okay, well, how about we look at this from somebody else's point of view, for an example. And, I had a recent experience where there was a lady from India, and she had this this pivotal moment for her of, she goes, I realized that I'm showing up with my cultural norms, and I wasn't saying that aloud, and they differ from everybody else who I'm dealing with, right? And they were asking me to sort of show up for myself differently, but I can't do that because that's not the way my upbringing is. I was told to sit in my place and don't, get out of that, within that boundary, if you will. And so it was very enlightening for her to go, oh my God, I actually don't want to be that way. And then there was this, oh, that doesn't feel very nice, right? Because this is the way I grew up. This is what my parents expect and so forth. But I don't live in India anymore. I live here in Australia. And so, it's moments like that you've got to allow people a lot of, grace, I guess, to figure things out themselves. And then work with the clients to say, okay, well, this is where we're at now. Where do you want to go to? Right. And it just doesn't, we're not creatures that you flick the switch, I always say. Right. You've got to go on a journey and on a journey together. And, we sort of map out how you do that, because it is very, very challenging when that's not my upbringing. You weren't brought up here. I wasn't brought up here. The way people, their different perspectives, to bring that into the room and talk about it, very vulnerable, right? But it's empowering, and that's where the growth comes. So in co-creating, you make sure you hear everybody.
Now, you went on and started the Ripple Effect Institute, and there you really emphasize value alignment and purpose-driven impact. But when people or leaders are speaking within the boardroom, that might just end up there. How do you then help organizations to practically implement these principles on a day-to-day basis? Because it's at the ground, at the bamboo scaffolding, that all of this really needs to be present, not in the air-conditioned boardroom where projects are being discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. Every client's different, and every project team is different. And so, it's basically taking where the organization wants to, where they are now to where they want to go to, and then map that out and go, okay, you may be at I use the capability matrix. And so you say you may be at a 0 and you want to go to a 5. What's that look like? How long is that going to take? what do you have to do that? What are the foundations of all that? Could be starts with your policies and procedures, could be that it starts with the strategy in the boardroom, it could be with some communications or a smattering of all the other, things to take you on that journey. But some people are further, it's further along in this journey, and some are just starting. So it's like starting a new project from the very beginning each and every time. That's why I don't come in with a sort of a standard, because every organization, of first of all, where they're at and where do they want to get to, is completely different. And what are their values? What's their strategy? And what's their vision and mission? And so it's got to align with all that to make sure it's successful.
Absolutely. And also, the kind of job that you've been doing is in sort of a male dominated industry, where it is, general consensus that a lot of men just don't really voice, their emotions and things of that nature. What has that been like, for you? And obviously trying to help them and get people to realize they, being on this psychological safety sort of trajectory.
Yeah, look, it's a journey that you have to take everybody with you. And so, again, I love working with men. That's why I'm in construction. And what I've really found is, again, those cultural norms. A lot of times we have, taught our men to, suck it up, don't cry, blah blah blah, all the things. And so for them to hear some of what is a part of that emotional intelligence is getting to know themselves, is understanding their values, is understanding their emotions and what triggers them. Emotions is just data, right? Emotions is telling us something about something we care about. And then, so the behaviors are how we react to those. The emotions, fine. The behaviors is what we can control, right? So a lot of times, just that session can go for hours in itself, and it's I would again use the word vulnerable. People getting to know themselves, about how they feel about something and what those emotions are, can be quite daunting, right? Particularly with men who have been told, shove it down in there, right? And don't feel it, don't recognize it. Well, to be emotionally intelligent, unfortunately, you've got to understand yourself and understand what those emotions are telling you. I absolutely love working this space, particularly with men who just lean in and go, oh my God, I just never knew this about myself, right? But it's a challenge. It's a challenge for them, and it's a challenge for anybody who hasn't got to know themselves and then looks within, and that's a challenge for all of us.
I can only imagine. Is this the reason why you say, the construction sort of industry and aligned industries have the highest, sort of suicidal rates? Would it be particularly caused by some of these effects, or?
There's not been studies particularly on that one. Again, what you'll see right now is we have a new culture and construction standard, and that culture and construction standard is just being rolled out. Like today is, the Australian Contractors Association is putting out some workshops on this and so forth. Their studies have focused on how many, the work hours, and so we work long hours, which starts to, a lot of times it's on, let's say on the weekends and 12-hour days, for example. Sometimes there's, 7 days a week and you're rotating shifts. So, the intensity of that. The other thing is then that takes you away from your family, right? And so that causes, I guess, stress. And that's sort of where I'm taking the understanding of what is that stress and how is it you're dealing with that stress. And, what are the tools that we can do to work on that stress? That's the space that I work in. And so I can't remember the third pillar off the top of my head. And so where we're at is one, as I've mentioned before, our productivity is appalling, right? And so again, if you look at productivity, it's how is it that we're showing up? What is it that we need to change to be able to be more productive? So I go into, how is it that we're dealing with each other? How is it that, we're understanding ourselves? And then how is it that we're mapping that to what the organization wants, with the well-being as for all of us being the foundation of all of that. And yeah, to me, that's the place that we need to be at, not the technical side of putting the human side, to the side, and work on the AI and better machines and better products. That's part of it, right? And that will be coming. But we've got to look at the bottom line is we build things, and it's we as humans build things. So it's that human part of it.
I can understand. Maybe, obviously, that decline in productivity could be people are on their phones or they're catcalling, women as they pass by the road, or things of that nature that happen in the construction industry. There, it could be something. But the most interesting part about all of this is not only have you worked within this industry, but you also have a personal understanding of what people could be going through in their life.
Yeah.
If you would allow us to just maybe go there a little bit, you've also faced a few personal challenges in your life, which now
Mm.
maybe give you a bit of insight as to how certain ways and certain people are, approaching work and maybe the environment they're in. How did the experiences that you have faced push you to start leaning into your passions and actually start redefining your success?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Prospero. I think let's just take breast cancer, for instance. You mentioned that before, went through breast cancer, and it was, again, that pivotal moment in time where a moment before this, I was fine. And then you get that doctor saying, this moment, you're not fine. And tomorrow I want to take your breasts. And I'm thinking, whoa, hang on a second. That's a little bit intense. Um, where that took me to was trying to then, I took, again, it was perspective taking, right? I worked for BP at that time, and BP had an amazing culture. I had 70 people working for me in my team with 7 direct reports. So it was an intense point of we're putting together project management office. And, I came back and said, look, I want to continue working, but I have to, go through a double mastectomy, and I have to have chemo. And, they said, okay, whatever you need, we'll support you. Right. So there was an epiphany right there and then in saying the culture does matter. This matters a lot to me right now. And how is it that my team, what's that mean to my team? So I said, well, first of all, I'd like to talk about this. And they went, oh, okay. Not many people talk about cancer, or, they shrink away and they, it's one of those taboos. So I started to talk about it. Again, the culture in my team changed. We were more transparent. We communicated. People were sharing things. I had people coming up to me in the lift and saying, look, I saw you talk the other day about breast cancer. My father's going through it, and I have nobody to talk to. Can I come and chat with you? It just went more and more deep. Like those ripples were amazing, right? That people just to open yourself up and to be vulnerable and to be authentic as a leader in an organization made an instant change to my team and how we worked together, and everybody supported each other that much more. The communication was much clearer, as I said. It just kept going from there. So that was in about 2012, and that was a huge part of then connecting that to, well, I've seen this work, and I can, I've felt it. I know what this means as a leader, and then how we work together. So I started incorporating that in working with clients. Later on, I started Ripple Effect. The other thing that there was another pivotal moment when I was out in the mine site, and I'm the project manager out there. And there was one day that I completely and utterly lost my stuff, right? It was like that was the straw that broke the back. Never knew it was coming, right? The moment before that, I was absolutely fine. And then, it's that moment of spilt milk, and then you just lose your stuff, right? And I look back on that moment and go, well, I wasn't talking about how I was feeling. I was very stressed out. I had very long hours. I had a crew of 70 people. I had 50 trucks out going. We had 2 shifts a day, and going around the mine site. And so that epiphany was, again, we need to talk about this, and we need to figure out how to de-stress ourselves. Now, if somebody had given me all the tools that I give to the teams now, I wouldn't have lost my stuff, right? But I needed that point in time, I think, of that pivotal moment in time. And what happened was I ended up, I went and chatted with the workforce, and I ended up just screaming and, every expletive that there is. And, they were just testing me. They were tired as well. And so, and then when I came back into my office, I kicked my foot through the door. Luckily, I had steel-toed boots on, right? And so, yeah, it was not a good look, but it was a good learning and growth moment that I've now put back into my learnings and the tools that I provide. And I always call them tools, the toolbox that I provide all the clients of going, this is why it is so important to do that and to recognize that's what's going on.
And obviously, ever since then, you're now known for your energy and positivity and, things of that nature. What sort of practices do you now personally use, first of all, to maintain your well-being and just keep that energy flowing, especially during challenging times? Because I'm just looking at my shoes. I don't have steel top boots to be kicking those down, but there's got to be ways that you can center yourself during challenging times.
Yeah. One of my favorites ones is a pause. I do my Tai Chi, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space, is where is it, and that's a Viktor Frankl, quote. It is recognizing that there's a pause between when something happened and to when I need to respond to it, right? And that response could be just a couple deep breaths, those mindful breaths. We know how much that changes the body, right? And really letting that breath go. And, it slows the heart rate down and, gets you out of that fight or flight mode. And so, to use just a simple thing. And, I've had people come back to me and say, I didn't believe you when you said that. And I just used that and it got me out of harm's way. Oh my God, thank you so much. People call me up from years past of doing things like that. It's that recognizing that, we do have a space, and our behaviors, as I talked about before, is what we're in control of. We're in control of that space. Take that time, right? Now, that's in the moment, right? So what do I do as a foundation? I make sure that I exercise every day in one way or another. Now, again, that's hard. And most people say I'm very challenged by that. I have no time. I've worked 12 hours a day. I've got to come back to my family, et cetera, et cetera. So even if you take, a little bit of time and go for a walk during a meeting, take a little bit of time that stretch out before you start the day. Do a little bit of 2 minutes of yoga. Even 2 minutes makes a difference, right? To calm yourself. I usually try to do at least 45 minutes a day and put it in if I can. If I can't, then that's the next self-care, is that self-compassion and saying, it is okay, right? We are so harsh on ourselves, right? We need to treat ourselves like our best friend would treat us, right? And so giving ourselves grace and saying, couldn't do it all today, couldn't get it in, but it's okay, right? And most of us in our head we start self-flagellating ourselves instead. You're a loser, you're a real, muck up, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we do go into this catastrophizing, and we don't know that we do it, right? And so that's that inward look into self. And so I've spent a lot of time. The self-compassion piece was really tough for me. I didn't realize how tough I was as a recovering perfectionist. That was something that was really important as a tool. So there's a number of tools that I put out there, and I think the self-care piece, the health piece, is one of the pillars in positive psychology that makes a thriving person. So it's a really important piece.
Absolutely. And with the work that you're doing, you've actually put it upon yourself to create 1 million ripples of positive impact. Now, first of all, how are you measuring these ripples, and what does success look like for you in this mission?
Yeah, when I first put that out there, I asked myself the same question: how am I going to measure that? And I decided, again, you'll see that I don't have ripple effect, I have ripple effect. Effect is about sitting in the here and now and concentrating on what you and I are talking about and not worrying about what the effect is and how is it that that's going to go on. Because what I kept getting myself into this space of going, well, now I've got to follow up with Prosper and see if Prosper's business then, did a little bit better. And I think, no, that's not up to me, right? The energy goes into the here and now, and I'm just going to have to. I don't measure the million ripples, right? That's just the basis of saying, if I'm going to do 1 million ripples, that means I can't let any moment go by and not lean into it. So it's more of a reminder of going, dig in deep right now. How is it that you can change this into a more positive space? How do I do that? You asked before, some of the self-care piece goes into this as well, and that is a daily gratitude. So I have a daily gratitude reminder that goes off. And at that point in time, if I'm with anybody and that goes off, I'll ask them what they're grateful for, and I share what I'm grateful for. Right. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not with anybody, I'll write it down. I'll write 3 gratitudes down. Now, this has been going on for 10 years. And so when my alarm goes off, and people now know that, and it goes off to the song Happy. And so they hear that, they automatically, like Pavlov's dog, start telling me about what they're grateful for. Right. It's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I like that. And for those that are looking to maybe work with the Ripple Effect Institute or explore some of the well-being and leadership programs or tools that you are offering, where can they get more information?
Best place to go, I'm on LinkedIn, you can find me there, and then rippleeffectinstitute.com is the website. Easy to find me. You can't, there's very few Laurice temples in the world.
Absolutely. I think definitely it will be an easy place for people to jump onto and have a look at what you've been doing. I'm maybe gonna warn people that they might just come across, photos or videos of you singing and dancing when no one is watching. Is that an expectation that people should also?
That's it. Music's in the heart. And when I hear a good song, I'm on the dance floor, whether it's in the kitchen or whether walking down the street. Love it.
Absolutely. Now, I can't thank you enough for the time that we have spent today, and with all the ripple effects that maybe this video is going to produce, and things of that nature. But now that we've introduced people to your world, what can people expect? What's next in the world of Laurice Temple?
Oh, with myself, I think I'm excited about where we're at in the history of time, right? There's a lot of things that, divide us. There's a lot of things that, just, all the negativity that's going on in the world. This is the perfect time to, and people are more aware of wanting to be, and it's not a toxic positivity. You have to be really careful to be more positive, but to be more mindful of and kind to each other. And I'm really excited about, whether I work with you or whether I come across you on the street or whether you take something from this, and just remember to be kind to yourselves, to be kind to each other. Look, that's what I leave you with. And I think that's where the world is right now. We're in this together, and watch this space.
I love that. I love that. You see, Laurice, when I was growing up, we were always taught to respect your neighbor. We've got the concept of Ubuntu. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, which basically means I am because you are. And part of that also, some of the questions that we were meant to ponder where you were given an apple seed and then you were made to guess how many apples are in that seed.
Mm.
And I think that is the seed that you've planted today, which we never know the ripples of how it's all going to end up there in the world. So for that, I mean, your commitment to creating positive impact and driving cultural change is truly inspiring. Some people set out to change the world and they just do a mess of it, but you're literally doing it. So on behalf of anyone who's going to catch any of these ripple effects, thank you so much, Laurice.
Thank you, Prosper. Thanks for having me today. It's been a great conversation.
Fantastic. And for those that are watching right now, if you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to either rewatch this and really take note of all the golden nuggets that Laurice has been throwing in there. And while you're at it, why don't you share this episode just to keep those ripples of positive impact going. You never know whose day you might actually make, not their day, but maybe their month, their year, everything else that comes along with just a little, gift that you would have passed on to the people. Until next time, keep making waves your own way. Bye for now.